Hey guys, it's Gwynaire here from Defy Reality Entertainment, and I am going to show you some of my work in Blender today. So I haven't really planned exactly what I'll be doing for this video, but it's basically just me talking whilst working. There's nothing particularly that I'm going to be showing you in terms of technique. That will probably, come through in the video anyway as I work. So I'm looking at doing one of these every week. There might be a specific video where I'll be focusing on like engine work or something that I really want to show you specifically. But today's session is just getting things together for a particular scene that I'll be working on. So I'm going to try and sort of talk through that a bit more and sort of show you what I'm up to within Blender. And the reasons why I do the certain things I do within Blender and where I hope it will be leading to in the next week as well, and little milestones as well, sort of the milestones that I have for the game, and this is kind of like a cool example of that. So yeah, excuse me for a quick second, I'm just going to set up a render here. So this is my second computer just over here that I use. It's an A, and it renders all my images for Neyyah, and it's a very good companion. Very good companion. Always on the go, day and night. That's that one. So what I'm doing here at the moment is creating the interior for an area known as what I'm calling the storage bunker rail area at the moment. It's basically just like a storage area that was used for storage back in the day by the culture that created it. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but I actually created this area. Crikey, it might have been around maybe around April, May last year. So it's quite cool coming back to this part of Neyyah. What I've done is I've taken out the part that I need to use from another file, which is this one. This one has a bit more of the island area attached to it, as you can see, although it's not all of it at all. But it's, this is kind of the way that I tend to model a lot of my scenes and sets for Neyyah. I kind of create them in bite-sized chunks and then put them all together for setting up the cameras for the final nodes. So this area here is the area that I want to focus on, and I want to focus on what's going to be happening inside this door. Oh yeah, so it won't actually let me select. With these big files, I usually have to select certain parts of it to actually select certain models. It just gets a bit wishy-washy. Blah 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 blah. So I'll be creating the interior for this area here, and if I move this up, you can kind of like look inside. You can sort of see what I'm going to be doing inside here. So all this has to be completely, basically taken out and revamped. The player can only actually see a certain view from it anyway. So I actually created these sketches here earlier today. I'm going to be adding pictures onto the Patreon video as well. So I'm actually going to be adding these to the Patreon post, so be able to look at them a bit more clearly. I'm also going to add a few more sketches of this particular area from my sketchbooks as well onto the Patreon. Again, with Patreon, it's more of an intimate, exclusive, behind-the-scenes experience. It's probably the best place to be for all things Neyyah game dev related, just because I tend to go into a lot more detail with my posts. And the posts are as frequently as I can spare time to do them. I mean, at the end of the day, I prioritize making the game, but it's also a great place to get some great rewards, and from $1 a month you will get your name on the credits of the game as a Patreon supporter, and it supports the full-time game development as well. So definitely hit up Patreon and have a look and see if anything appeals to you, and maybe I'll see you on the other side of that portal as well. So this is a really cool example here of laying out a new scene. Usually it's done with just blocking, so I usually just block everything really the most simple form possible, just getting some basic 3D shapes in there and just making sure I've got everything sort of in proportion, scaled right, everything's just the right kind of distance away from each other. So I'm working on a scene, and it doesn't actually have it, you know, in this particular set here, but it's the interior for this bunker area here. So I'm doing the inside of it, and this belongs to this scene here. It should be here. Obviously in this particular set, mini set, I was working on this part of the building, as you can see here. And then it's just working out, okay, so in terms of the story, I don't want to give too much away, but in relation to the building and the environment, there are certain things to keep in mind, certain factors to include, and so I came up with, like, just now, just a quick sketch here of how the people in this world would have got to that bunker. And yeah, I had to actually change my I had to change where the passageway would be, just because I thought, you know, there was some rock area that could have held the passageway, so you could go through the passageway through the cliffs, but there's actually a bit more of a gap in this area here that separates it from the actual bunker, but this part doesn't. Like, you can actually see here there's some rock that actually carries on from this bottom part of the factory building and goes all the way, and it can go all the way through the rock to where the bunker will be. So keeping that in mind, okay, now go into this set here. I'm working with a lot less verts and polygons, you know. I'm working with a lot less polygons in this scene, so that enables me to work a lot faster. And I can now work out where basically everything's going to go. The player is only going to be able to see it from this perspective here. This is Neyyah. This is our human scaling model, named by one of our patrons, Nazim. It was a while ago. He won one of the specials I was doing over there on Patreon, and he got to name the 3D human. So that's pretty cool. Kind of reminds me of the liquid metal dude from Terminator 2. It's kind of creepy sometimes in certain whoa. He likes to jump around and dance around the place randomly too. As you can see here, he just sort of just stares into your soul. Dun 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 dun. So yeah, he is used to basically scale all the cameras up, so everything will be at a correct height from paths, and when I'm setting the cameras for renders, and as you can see here, I can just set up the camera and I can take him away, and you know, that's how I usually do all the final scenes, all the final renders for the game are done that way. So I'm just I'm setting up a scene here on this other computer just for rendering. Yeah, that'll take a little while to load. So the main thing I want to do, at least today, or should I say tonight, is lay everything out inside here. And it means taking things away. I mean, the great thing is that the camera is going to be this close to the building anyway, so a lot of this stuff can actually be taken away. So I've got the tunnel here, and this is where a rail cart would be coming in. It's then just working out, okay, so where would the floor be? So if we take Neyyah out of the picture, it's going to select few of these assets. The main thing is basically making sure I can actually look inside and see what the player will see. I mean, I can work and model with that, but you know, it's nice to kind of have a bit more of like how the environment would have worked completely, you know, if you were able to access it completely. It's just a detail thing, it's kind of like a world building thing. For now I'm just going to move that into another layer in Blender, and I can actually probably cut some of that down. So when the door rises up, there's a lot there that doesn't need to be there. So I can actually take some of that out. Just cutting out some of the old polys. I love 2.79. I work really smoothly in it. I work fast in it. And I know it's not the latest version of Blender, but it does the job, you know, for what I need it to do. So yeah, I mean, I think one day I'm definitely going to be getting into the newest version of Blender, whatever that will be. It'll probably be after the game's finished, and you know, working on any future game releases. So, but for now, 2.79 is just, yeah, it's just a lot easier for me to work with. And I actually use 2.92 for rendering. I actually find the later versions of Blender to be kind of really weird to deal with in certain situations. Like if you bring in old sets that were made in 2.79, they just don't look the same, the lighting's off. They did improve the lighting, so it just requires a bit more work with textures and changing shaders and stuff like that. It's just so time consuming. So, but a lot of the time, it's just, yeah, it's just a lot easier just to work with 2.79 and just bring into a newer version of Blender for rendering, just because it can render faster, especially with the adaptive sampling and all that. Have a floor, an idea for where the floor will be. Okay. So I'm just having a quick look here at some of my old sketches throughout last year, and like I said, this area was created between, I think it was like April and May last year. So sometimes it's a case of going back to some old designs and yeah, retracing my steps a bit. I've actually got the wrong book, so I actually need to look in one of the older books. I'll be starting the 6th Neyyah book very soon. And these are all my sketchbooks that I use. I compile notes in here, various different sketches and notes that I just use to basically reference when I'm creating things in 3D. So yeah, I just need to go back to particular part of this particular book, which is book 4. And sometimes it's just good for me to brush up on, you know, certain things in the scene, especially small details, because, and that's why it's so important for myself as a developer of a game like this, to keep notes of everything that I'm doing within the environment. And that can be done in books like this, or it can be in a Word document. So I actually have like Word documents for each area of the game, and it compiles a list of various different things that the player will be coming across, certain puzzle elements, and lots of different things. So it's really important to keep track of that. Yeah, so basically looking at this tower here, there's obviously changes that happen within the environment that make sense within the game, but then looking at what effect that would have within this interior. So that's, you know, something to always consider when you're doing something like this at this scale. So I'm just going to move our little character in here. I'm going to start looking inside. it's kind of working out. Okay, so the scale here, moving them to this particular part of the model, and seeing how low does that floor need to be if someone wants to climb back out. So there's those kind of things to think about, especially with using a Neyyah here, human 3D model. And you know, there's a few things here I could start looking at taking out as well, that I don't really need in this particular set, especially because we're looking at the inside of the bunker rather than the outside. You can get away with taking a lot of things out and just putting more things in, obviously, to create this kind of interior. And what's really cool here, we have this pipe that the player would be able to see from outside, and it's actually, even though it wasn't really intentional, it's actually gone into the cliff here, so we can actually see, oh, okay, you know, that then needs to be connected to something else inside here, you know, so we can work with that. Just gonna get a basic roof going for this particular area. I'm gonna create a wall. I'm gonna have maybe some of the cliff area exposed, not too much. It's mainly focusing on kind of probably more brickwork, and again it's just blocking the area out, so it's showing what the area is going to look like in terms of the basic models have been put in place, and then later on they will be textured and all sorts. And what I tend to do a lot of the time as well is I kind of go back to my sets and just replicate a lot of the assets I already have. It just saves a lot of time, and it keeps everything cohesive as well within the environment. You know, I might add slight changes to them. There might be slight changes to the brickwork, or depending on whereabouts in the game that they are, you know, what kind of effects has the environment that this location is in, what kind of effects has that had on the materials, like the concrete, the wood, the metal. I try and think about all those kind of things as well, and just makes things look a bit a little bit different, and you know, spices things up a bit as well. Yeah, for instance, I don't need this model here, that can just go away, and I can even focus on just, you know, something that's coming out here. So we already have this model here of the tower, and what we can do is, even if, you know, it's just a temporary thing, I can just add this. Let's make sure I have most of it selected anyway. I can even just bring this down, and I don't have to duplicate it, because again, for this particular scenario, the player will be looking at this area this close. None of the other stuff exists, so I can actually bring that down, and already we can see the scale is way off. So I mean, that idea might not particularly work. I could make it smaller, and I can flip it and just kind of wedge it up there. I think the idea is basically to have this it's kind of like it was like a pulley system used in this particular area, and it's basically just working on what's going to look best for this particular area. We've got like a rail cart here, and this would kind of be classed as not just a storage area, but like a rail cart station, so you know that the rail cart would stop in here as well. So I'm just going to rotate that. And it's also working out, okay, where will the lighting be within the scene? Where would the lights be, and why would they be in that particular part of the scene? So it's those kind of things I have to think about as well. So we're just gonna minimize this. I'm actually focusing on the hallway now. So I'm just gonna see whereabouts the hallway would start for this particular interior. And I'm definitely thinking it would be over there in that sort of corner. It seems to work really nicely. The pipe at the moment is like jutting out, so even though it's there, I know it will be coming out there. I'm just going to minimize this for now, and I'm actually going to flip it and make it a bit smaller. And there's a few things that I would love to actually paste into this scene from a few other sets that I've got, particularly this hallway. I've already got like a hallway tunnel area within the game. It's going to set up a render on that computer, and so yeah, I think I'll actually copy some of those assets into this scene, just because it's going to fast track things a lot. And some of this cliff, I mean, you can't see it from this area, so I'm actually going to minimize this a bit too and bring it over here a bit more. Let's see what we can work with here, how much we need and how much we don't. To be honest, if anything, we might not need any of it. So I'm actually going to delete it. Sometimes I don't delete things out of sets, I actually just throw them into another layer, just because it's a lot easier to work with my layers and move things around than it is to sometimes delete things, because it can take, depending on how big the scene is, it can take quite a long while for things to then refresh and load up. I'm actually going to bring a wall over here. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, that's cool, I like that. Keeps things quite neat as well. So the pipe, obviously this looks really messed up now, but going into the cliff, the pipe would be releasing water or sewage, that kind of stuff, things that don't really need to be within this environment. And so those mechanics can even be behind this wall, so the wall just works for this particular environment. I might change this top here. I'm not too sure if this works, but it keeps everything cohesive with what's happening with the tower here, so I might keep it in. It's actually really cool being in this environment again. It's been a long time since, you know, I've seen any of these models. And that's the great thing about creating a game like Neyyah, that you create over a long period of time. It tells a story. Like, each model tells its own story of like what was happening at the time it was being made, and that's something I really want to kind of incorporate into Neyyah through Easter eggs. I've got a few ideas of things that I want to include, and just from a developer standpoint, it's quite fun. It keeps things quite exciting as well, especially for a nice long game project like Neyyah. So I'm just going to see here, we don't need such long rails, we can cut these down. I'm just going to check what other projects are going on here at the moment. So I'm actually waiting for a couple of things. In the background, I'm actually going to be pasting this model into another set. So this is being used as well in another part of the game. In a part of the game that was made back in, I think it was like October, November 2020. This model here was made back in August, around August time last year. So getting off for like a year apart from each other, and they're going to be combined together. And that's another thing. It's like seeing the models that were created like a year ago being combined with other parts of models. It's just, I don't know, there's something beautiful about it. Because from an artist's perspective, you know, you can look at paintings that you've done over years and years. I'm working in an environment, in a game world, that I've created over years, and so certain parts of the game were created when I was in a very particular headspace, and I might have created that in a very particular way for a certain reason because of the headspace I was in. And so it's just really nice sort of revisiting those places and then combining things with how I am now, and I think that's really cool. I think that's one of the I guess personal adventures, like the personal journeys that you go on with creating a game this big, outside of all the overwhelming tasks that you have as being a solo indie game developer full time, but still it's just really nice having those things to look at and sort of think about, and you're like, oh yeah, you know, that's why I did it this way, and maybe I could have done it better the other way, you know, maybe I could have done it a slightly different way if I did it now, but you know, and some places are being revamped just because of those reasons, but that's just mainly because of the story evolving and the game being at a slightly different place to where it was when I maybe created a certain part of the game. But yeah, so that's always quite fun. One of the fun experiences of Neyyah is sort of retracing your steps and bringing the old with the new as well, so that's always fun. So yeah, a lot of this actually is going to go. You know, the player looks in, they can see everything in here. Because it's not actually accessible, there's a few things I might actually add to make that a bit clearer for the player. It might be boarded, like boards that have been put up maybe on the other side of this door, so when I bring the door back in, when they lift it up, there's actually going to be some boards. Whoa! There's going to be some boards that are like going across this entrance here, and so maybe the player can only actually look through gaps in the boards. So yeah, this is another sign of how old Neyyah is, and you know, world building is something I definitely love working with, and sometimes those things just don't make sense. Like, you know, in the game world, it's like, why would you even create that for a game? But for me, Neyyah is more than a game. It's an actual place. You know, it's a place that I want the player to go to. It'd be cool if it was an actual place. I actually had a comment today on Facebook saying something like on the lines of informing players that Neyyah does not exist because they're going to be very disappointed that it's somewhere they can't actually go on vacation to. So yeah, maybe one day, you know, make loads of money from the game, build a theme park, a Neyyah theme park. That'd be pretty cool. See what happens down the track, eh? So I'm just taking a few of these loose ends out and making everything look a bit neater. This tunnel, you know, needs to continue into this area, so we can work on that at, you know, a slightly later point. Main thing is just making sure everything's sort of blocked out. I'm actually going to set my camera up from this perspective here, sort of like looking in as you would. And on top of that, I'm going to model within this scene here. So I'm just going to create my little platform that I have planned. This would be kind of where people would come to the rail cart. You know, I can't really give too much away. I can't really say too much, and you know, so it's mainly me just laying everything out today and just showing you how I kind of like block out a scene before I kind of create it properly, you know, with textures and everything like that. I don't want to give too much of the story away. This tunnel might actually be a bit too big, but I'm just going to start curling it around, because it would be leading this way anyway. It doesn't. I'm not too fussed about the proportions of an area like this if you're not exploring it. The idea is just to give the illusion a lot of the time. And that's a cool thing about a pre-rendered game, especially if there's areas that the player can't access, is that, you know, you can kind of get away with certain things, and things that you might not be able to get away with in a real-time game. We've got a palm tree in the hallway. Yeah, it's things like this. Like sometimes when things go wrong like this, I'm thinking, okay, well, would that work? Could something be growing? I mean, there's obviously foliage and stuff growing in these interior areas anyway, like, you know, weeds and stuff like that, but could a tree possibly be growing inside an area? But then I think, there's no sunlight, you know, so it wouldn't really work. So it probably wouldn't work, but it sometimes makes things look a bit more interesting as well. Maybe it's a dead tree, you know? Maybe it just didn't grow properly. So we'll keep that there anyway. It might not even be in the final scene, but I'll just keep that there. I might be able to work with that. I do want it to be a bit more curly. And again, this is kind of like a scene where you're like, oh, you know, like, so there's a tree in the way here, and the roots could be growing across the ground, you know, so it could be a really cool scene. So one thing I want to do now is think about what the floor is going to look like. I think it's going to be like grated metal, so I'm actually going to pinch these in and work out what parts of the floor aren't going to be grated and what parts are going to be solid plate metal. And it's mainly working with the platform here as well. So it's going to move that out, move that down. It's going to flip it a bit, even if it's not completely straight. I don't really care right now. It's going to flip that around. So even if it's like a ramp, but that'll work for me right now. Cool. Maybe a little staircase. And one of the things I don't think I have open at the moment, although I do have some over here which I can actually copy, I believe, are these crates. I need to have a few of these in this particular scene, that's for sure. But there's also going to be other kind of storage units in this area too, in this building. So I can just make sure I've copied that, and I can bring them into here. So yeah, it's going to be a very old environment, very knackered, and pretty much like anywhere in Neyyah. Nice and withered and derelict and dank, and yeah, proper abandoned, you know what I mean? Sometimes it's great because some of these copy and pasted assets you can just like leave as they were, but sometimes they have to be kind of made to look a bit different. Placement is such an important thing, and the great thing about a pre-rendered game like Neyyah is that it's composition. So you're working with like pictures all the time and framed shots, and I think that's what's really fun for me. Being foremost an artist, I get to create a picture using 3D create these really realistic looking scenes, set up a camera and make it look the best way it can be from that particular perspective. And yeah, I'm just looking through a door here, you know, like that's my camera angle right now, just looking through the doorway after lifting this up. But what's inside? Well, I know that the player's not going to be able to explore inside, so that gives me room to add things that, you know, would be kind of awkward if it was a real-time game. So I have that on my side, and it's quite nice to actually work with that and take advantage of that, you know, in the best way possible. So I'm thinking maybe pallets would be a cool thing in here, trolleys, that kind of thing. I actually have there's actually a trolley I have already made that I can actually bring into this scene, and I think that'll actually work quite nicely. So yeah, I'm just going to experiment with these quickly. That's kind of a cool angle. I don't know how, I don't want too many of these sort of boxes like this, otherwise it's going to look slightly bizarre and a bit stupid. So it needs to be done in a certain way. It could be shelves in here. I'm actually going to do that. I'm going to create like a shelving unit. Maybe for certain reasons I can't really explain, but this shelving unit would have been used to store certain dates of products. This is the stuff I'm really into, just the world building stuff. I love, you know, all aspects of the game dev stuff, but foremost when I started creating Neyyah, it was like, I want to create a world, you know, I want to create a place, you know, I want to escape reality and create a new reality. I want to defy reality, and that's one of the things about creating a game like this. You're creating your own reality, you're creating your own world. And I guess with the pre-rendered graphics, there's two ways of looking at it. No, it's not real time, you can't explore like you would do in the real world, but you know, at the same time, with the pre-rendered look, it's just got more of that photorealistic clarity to it. And I think in terms of the way the game plays, I think, you know, that's a huge advantage over real time, particularly for the style of the game. There's a lot more things you can do with shock value, and you know, one of the things you can do is have something appear on the screen very quickly, and the player wouldn't be expecting that, but if in a real-time environment they might, you know, see something from a particular distance, it might take it, you know, it kind of ruins the surprise. You can do a lot more surprises in a point-and-click game like this, and it works so well because it's not only seeing beautiful environments, but sometimes there are some spooky, eerie, weird environments that the player will be going in, and that point-and-click navigation, it was used really well in Darkfall, and the game Darkfall by Jonathan Vokes. Fantastic game, you should check it out. I'll actually link the game in this video, the Steam link. He created a sequel to the game as well, it's fantastic too. Those kind of games, those spooky, supernatural kind of based games, they work so well for the point and click system. And I guess there are elements of that inspire me with Neyyah, so it's definitely something I'll be looking into pushing further with the Neyyah, you know, in certain environments. Not too spooky, you know, but just a bit of spook. So when I'm working like this, I have to kind of turn my head a lot of the times just to see whereabouts the computer is, this computer here, whereabouts the renders are they finished, have they crashed? So it's kind of like I've got, you know, my head and my eyes and all different areas of this room, just looking at, making sure I'm looking at everything going on. It's kind of supervising. I'm basically doing 2 jobs at once, you know, I'm like 2 people. So I'm just gonna stock that up. I think this works quite nicely, I think, for a bunker. I'm gonna make it look a bit more. I think I'm gonna make it look a bit more organic in a way. I'm probably gonna bring some of that terrain back in, create some nice big long tree roots coming down from the ceiling, make it look really run down and broken into, and have, I think, to be honest, I'm just gonna add them now. It's just a quick test, just a basic form. I'm gonna add some like planks that have been like broken down. Maybe there's some big beams that can be overhead like this. But then they're like smaller beams. They could even be metal, and they've just sort of like split down. They've broken down the middle and like broken away because of all the ground above it. Just over time, it's just like caused it to cave in, and I think that would be really cool to experiment with. And there are so many places within Neyyah that it's really important to have folders like this when you're working with a game like this, and it just keeps everything a lot more organized, and yeah, it's good. It works really well. It's just then remembering where everything is, so it's kind of keeping everything in your head. So we've got that, we don't need that one. Go back into Fungi. Okay, back into here. And some of these sets are just really small as well. Like they're pretty small environments. The mouse on this computer doesn't seem to want to work very well, so I actually swap. At the moment I'm swapping around my mice so I can actually maneuver within this environment on this computer. So that's a bit weird. So yeah, I've got something similar here. So having planks on the ceiling and having them kind of breaking away and the soil coming through, or just the ground above causing the ceiling to break away. I've actually created that already in a scene here. I don't know if I can find it. So I've already got these kind of broken planks above here. So I can actually, just as an example, not that I'll be using them directly, but I can just bring these in, and actually I might just bring in the ceiling as well, because I believe that's a rock asset. Yeah, so you can see here you got the shader, the texture. I'll copy those and bring them into my scene that I'm working on currently, and I'm just going to place them. I'm not too sure where. So as you can see here, these sets have been created. I usually create all my sets on this giant ocean plane, and that's where I kind of base everything. Even if it's like an individual model that will be brought into another set, I use this. It's like a world. I call it. Basically, I call it something close to world template, and it's basically got all my settings in it. It's got my ocean in it, it's got my lighting in it, and particularly for Philipsoo Island, it's just easy to start from scratch in this kind of template scene, and bring in any assets that I need to use for another set. So for example, this bunker area. So yeah, I'm not gonna actually use the concrete as it is, but already like that we can see that the plank is kind of broken away. So yeah, just fast forwarding a bit, I also used this door frame area you could call it a door frame. It's more like a sort of like an archway that the player passes through in a particular part of the game. And I actually use this in the scene for the bunker, and here we are. So now I've been able to add some sources of light to the scene. I've kind of obviously got a few things going now, like an actual ground area, which I've taken from this scene here, which I modelled towards the end of last year, and it's another interior location, and I thought that would be perfect for this scene as well. And I've got some volumetric stuff going on as well. At the moment what's happening here is a render preview, so it's slowly rendering the samples down in Blender, and I can move around the scene if I want to, but everything gets really fuzzy and takes a little while for it to, as you can see here, it's counting the actual samples up to about 140. I can set it to anything that I want, but it can be a bit of a time consuming thing to do, especially if the scene's really big. So I only tend to do it if I'm working on small models, on sometimes scenes like this, just to get a kind of idea of what things are going to look like when it's actually rendered. But yeah, this scene's coming along really well now. I've got the light coming in here from the tunnel. I've got also a light source coming down from the top of this tower here, which I've actually deleted for now. So the tower would have been here, it's now coming through. I've made a sort of gap here where the actual light is passing through. Might have to make it a bit bigger depending, or make the light a bit brighter. Another thing is that light is technically coming from this direction, so there's no light actually coming through the tunnel, which kind of defeats the purpose of having a light source coming through the tunnel at all. But again, it's just kind of an idea of like, I mean, there could even be like maybe a light that's on in this tunnel, but it's just a bit of experimenting, and sometimes it's just nice to have a few lights around the place while I'm adding the models in, just to see where everything is. But yeah, this has been a cool little video. Sorry it's been a bit staggered today. I've just had a really busy day and quite a busy evening, afternoon as well. So but I did manage to get some modelling in during the time I wasn't able to record, and I thought I'll show you that as well and see how fast the scene can progress as well. So yeah, a little insight into my work with Blender, blocking a scene and seeing it slowly come to life, and being able to use models I've already created for the game, which can speed up the progress very nicely. And yeah, I am looking forward to finally being able to show you the final version of this scene in the game upon release. So thanks for watching, and enjoy your day, evening, night, wherever you may be in the world, and I'll see you in the next video. Don't forget to like and subscribe as well if you want to see more of my content, and wishlist Neyyah on Steam. Thank you. Bye.